The judge's gavel slammed. Guilty. She tried to speak. Your Honor, please, I didn't. But no one listened. They silenced her truth. And in that silence, justice broke. If this moment stopped your heart for a second, don't blink. Because what happened next inside that courtroom would change everything you thought you knew about justice and the power of truth. And please subscribe for more powerful stories. The courtroom was packed. Every seat taken. Every whisper drowned under the sharp echo of the gavel. A woman named Claire Jensen stood at the defense table, hands trembling, eyes wet but fierce. She wasn't crying out of guilt. She was crying because no one would listen. Across the room, the judge adjusted his glasses, clearly annoyed. You've wasted enough of this court's time, he said coldly. He hadn't looked at her once. Not really. To him, she was just another case, another headline waiting to fade. Claire tried to speak. Your Honor, please, if you'd just hear me out. Enough, he interrupted. The audience murmured. A bailiff stepped closer, as if she were some kind of threat. But Claire wasn't fighting for freedom anymore. She was fighting for truth. Behind her sat her mother, clutching a small photo of Claire's daughter, a little girl with curly hair and missing front teeth. That picture was all the proof anyone needed that Claire wasn't the monster they painted her to be. But in that moment, truth was drowned by authority. When the judge read the sentence, his words were sharp and final. 10 years. No parole. A gasp tore through the room. Claire's mother sobbed loudly, begging the judge to stop. The courtroom guards tried to hush her, but her cries echoed through the halls like a curse. Claire didn't fight. She just whispered, I told the truth. Why won't anyone believe me? As the guards led her away, she looked back one last time. Her daughter's photo slipped from her mother's trembling hands, landing face down on the cold floor. Outside, reporters waited, cameras flashing, microphones shouting for reactions. No one cared about facts. They wanted a story, a villain. And Claire became the easy headline. Single mother lies to escape justice. But what no one knew was that her truth, the one no one cared to hear, was about to break the entire courtroom system. Because sometimes the truth doesn't whisper. Sometimes it roars back when you least expect it. 3 days after the sentencing, the courthouse halls felt colder than usual. Reporters had moved on, the cameras were gone, and Claire sat alone in a county jail cell, her mind replaying every word she tried to say but never got the chance to finish. She kept whispering it to herself, like a prayer. They never even looked at the evidence. A young public defender named Daniel Price had been assigned to her case. Fresh out of law school, nervous, idealistic, but something about Claire's silence haunted him. When he visited her that morning, she didn't ask for sympathy. She asked for a chance. Daniel, she said quietly, her voice cracked from sleepless nights, I didn't lie. The man they said I stole from, he's the one who framed me. I have proof, but no one wanted to see it. Daniel frowned. If that's true, then why didn't your old lawyer present it? She stared down at her cuffed hands. Because he told me to take the deal. Said fighting the system was suicide. That one sentence hit Daniel harder than anything he'd heard in school. Fighting the system, suicide. It wasn't justice anymore. It was survival. Later that night, Daniel drove back to a small office and started digging. Files, emails, transaction logs, everything the court had dismissed. He stayed up till dawn, and what he found turned his stomach. The victim in Claire's case wasn't a victim at all. He was a well-connected businessman, and the missing funds had been quietly rerouted into one of his own shell accounts. Daniel leaned back, pale, whispering to himself, she was telling the truth all along. The next morning, he rushed back to the jail, his heart pounding. Claire, he said breathlessly, I found it. Everything. You were right. But instead of smiling, Claire's eyes filled with tears. Then why does it still feel like no one will believe me? Daniel didn't have an answer. He just promised her one thing. Then I'll make them listen. And that promise, made in that cold, gray cell, would soon echo through the very courtroom that once silenced her. Because sometimes, all it takes is one person brave enough to listen, to turn a lie into justice. The courthouse doors creaked open again, but this time, it wasn't for a sentencing. It was for redemption. Daniel walked through those same doors, carrying a stack of papers that could shatter everything the court thought it knew. Claire was brought in wearing her orange jumpsuit, wrists still chained. The crowd was smaller now, but the same judge sat at the bench, stone-faced, his pride heavy as the gavel in his hand. "Your Honor," Daniel began, his voice steady but urgent, "I'm here to file a motion for reconsideration. We have new evidence that proves my client's innocence." The judge didn't even look up at first. "Mr. Price, we've been through this. The case is closed." Daniel stepped forward, refusing to back down. "With all due respect, sir, justice doesn't close its doors when the truth finally knocks." A hush swept across the courtroom. Even the clerk stopped typing. Claire's heart pounded so hard she could feel in her throat. Daniel placed the documents on the table. Bank statements, hidden transfers, proof that the supposed victim, Mr. Haverton, had been embezzling money for years. Claire wasn't the thief. She was the scapegoat. The judge's brow furrowed. "Are you accusing a state witness of perjury?" Daniel didn't flinch. "No, Your Honor. I'm proving it." He hit the projector button. The screen flickered on. Numbers filled the room, line after line of hidden deposits, each one stamped with Haverton's digital signature. Gasps erupted from the small audience. Even the bailiff shifted uneasily. And for the first time since her trial, the judge looked at Claire, not like a criminal, but like a woman wronged by the very system meant to protect her. He leaned back slowly, exhaling. "If what you're presenting is accurate, this court has made a grave mistake." Claire's eyes filled again, but this time, not with despair, with something far heavier. Relief. Daniel placed his hand on the table and whispered, "We're getting you out." But deep down, he knew it wasn't over. Because exposing one lie inside that courthouse meant exposing all the others built around it. And that's when the real fight for truth began. Word spread faster than Daniel expected. By noon, whispers turned into headlines. "Judge may have wrongfully convicted single mother." Reporters flooded the courthouse steps again, but this time their lenses pointed not at a supposed criminal, but at a woman who refused to stay silent. Inside, the tension was electric. The prosecutor, Mr. Jennings, stormed into the room, red-faced and defensive. "Your Honor, this so-called evidence is circumstantial. It could have been fabricated." Daniel cut in sharply. "Then why do these transactions lead straight to Haverton's offshore account? Why do they match the exact time the funds disappeared from the charity Claire managed?" The room went quiet. Even the judge hesitated. Jennings stammered, "There must be an explanation." Daniel's voice softened, but his words hit harder than any argument. "There is. She told the truth. You just didn't believe her." Those words hung in the air, raw, heavy, undeniable. Claire sat there trembling, her hands clutching the photo of her daughter that Daniel had brought from her mother. Her lips moved in silent prayer. For the first time in months, she felt seen, heard. Then the courtroom doors opened. A man in a gray suit entered, pale, sweating, avoiding everyone's eyes. It was Haverton himself. The judge looked up, surprised. "Mr. Haverton, what brings you here?" Haverton swallowed hard, his voice barely above a whisper. I heard about the motion. I wanted to, clarify." Daniel turned to face him. "Then clarify this." He tapped the stack of papers. "Did you or did you not make these transfers using the charity's funds?" Haverton's jaw tightened. I don't recall." Daniel stepped closer, unwavering. "Then maybe this recording will help your memory." He pressed play. The courtroom filled with the sound of Haverton's own voice from a leaked voicemail, bragging to a partner about pinning the loss on the woman who couldn't fight back. The silence that followed was deafening. The judge's gavel hit the desk once, but even that couldn't drown the collective gasp that swept through the room. Claire closed her eyes as tears streamed down her cheeks. For the first time in a long time, the truth wasn't just spoken, it was finally heard. The judge took off his glasses slowly. "This court will reconvene tomorrow to issue a formal ruling. But as of now, Mrs. Jensen, you have my apology." And for a moment, no one moved. Claire looked up, fragile, shaking, but with the faintest trace of smile. Because the truth she carried had finally broken through the walls built to silence it. The next morning, sunlight poured through the tall courthouse windows, but this time, it didn't feel like judgment. It felt like freedom waiting to be claimed. Claire stood beside Daniel, wearing the same orange jumpsuit, but her spirit looked lighter. The tension that once weighed her shoulders now burned like quiet fire in her chest. The crowd had doubled. Reporters, families, strangers who'd read her story. They all came to see if justice would finally do what it was meant to. Judge Warren entered the courtroom slowly. His tone was calm, but the guilt behind his eyes was impossible to miss. This court has reviewed the evidence, the financial records, and the audio recording provided by the defense. It is the opinion of this court that Claire Jensen was wrongfully convicted. Gasps filled the room again, but this time, they carried hope. Claire's mother broke into tears, clutching the photo she'd never stopped holding. The judge continued, his voice lower now. Mrs. Jensen, on behalf of this court and this community, I extend my deepest apologies. You are hereby exonerated of all charges. For a second, Claire just stood frozen. 10 months of silence, shame, and fear melted away in a heartbeat. Her knees buckled, and Daniel caught her before she fell. I told them, she whispered through sobs. I told them the truth. Daniel smiled softly. And you never gave up on it. That's what saved you. Outside, the media exploded. Reporters shouted questions, microphones flashing, headlines already forming. Truth triumphs. Woman freed after being ignored by court. But as Claire stood on those courthouse steps, she didn't say much. She didn't seek revenge, didn't shout about justice. She just looked up at the sky and said quietly, sometimes truth doesn't protect you right away, but it never leaves you. Her mother hugged her tight. Daniel stood behind them, exhausted but proud. Across the street, Haverton was escorted out of his office in handcuffs, the same cuffs that once dug into Claire's wrists. And in that moment, the lesson was clear for everyone watching. Lies may win in silence, but truth wins in time. As the cameras rolled and the crowd cheered, Daniel turned to Claire. What will you do now? She smiled faintly. Go home. Tell my daughter that the truth still matters. Because for Claire, justice wasn't just a verdict. It was a reminder that even when the world refuses to listen, honesty still holds the final word. That night, Claire didn't go home to peace. She went home to questions. Her small house still smelled of dust and loneliness, the kind that settles when the world forgets you. But as she walked in, her daughter, Lily, ran straight into her arms. Mommy, she cried, clinging tight. Grandma said you were coming home, but I didn't believe it until I saw you. Claire held her close, tears streaming silently. She had imagined this moment 1,000 times in her cell. The warmth, the forgiveness, the weight of her child's heartbeat against hers. No court in the world could ever take that away again. Daniel stayed a few steps behind, watching quietly. You did it, Claire, he said softly. You got your life back. But Claire shook her head. No, I didn't fight to get my life back. I fought to prove the truth still means something. The next morning, reporters were camped outside her home. Everyone wanted her story, TV shows, magazines, even podcasts. They wanted the drama, the redemption, but Claire wasn't chasing fame. She just wanted to make sure no one else went unheard like she did. So she agreed to one interview, not to relive her pain, but to teach something deeper. She sat before the camera, simple and calm, wearing the same locket she'd kept hidden in her cell. People think lying gets you ahead, she began, but it doesn't. It traps you. Even if truth costs you everything, it's still the only thing that sets you free. The reporter leaned forward. Do you forgive them, the judge, the prosecutor, even Mr. Haverton? Claire took a deep breath. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means refusing to let their lies define who I am. The video aired that night and went viral across the country. People saw more than a case. They saw a lesson. A reminder that truth may not scream loud, but doesn't die quiet. In schools, teachers played her clip in ethics classes. On social media, people quoted her words. Truth doesn't protect you right away, but it never leaves you. Meanwhile, Judge Warren called Daniel privately. His voice was low, weary. I learned something from her, from you both. Justice isn't about being right. It's about being willing to listen. And as Claire tucked Lily into bed that night, the world outside seemed just a little quieter. Not because everything was perfect, but because one woman's honesty had reminded everyone what justice was meant to sound like. She kissed her daughter's forehead and whispered, "Always tell the truth, no matter how small it seems. Because one day, it might save someone's life." Weeks passed, but Claire's story refused to fade. It wasn't just another headline anymore. It became a spark. People began revisiting old cases, questioning quick judgments, and realizing how often truth gets buried under pride and power. Daniel's small office suddenly became the center of something bigger. Letters poured in from across the country. Men and women who said they'd been silenced too, who'd been told their truth didn't matter. Some were ex-convicts, some were mothers, others were just ordinary people punished for being honest. Daniel read one letter out loud to Claire during their next meeting. "You made me believe in truth again. I was ready to lie to save myself, but your story stopped me." Claire smiled, though her eyes shimmered. "That's all I wanted," she said softly. "Not revenge, just change." But not everyone celebrated her. A few powerful people, those tied to Haverton's network, wanted the story buried again. They sent threats, warnings, and offers for her to stay quiet. One night, she found a note slipped under her door. Asterisk, "You proved your point. Don't push it further." Asterisk. She showed it to Daniel the next morning. He frowned, angry. "They're scared, Claire. The truth exposed them, and now they want to scare you back into silence." She folded the note calmly. "Then they haven't learned anything." Instead of hiding, Claire did the opposite. She launched a small community project called Voices Heard, a program that helped wrongly accused people find support, legal aid, and a platform to share their stories. The first meeting took place in a local library's dusty conference room. 10 people showed up. By the fourth week, there were 50. Survivors, advocates, and students filled every chair. Claire stood at the front, nervous but strong. "When I stood in that courtroom," she began, "no one listened. But the truth doesn't need an audience to exist. It just needs courage." She looked around the room, her voice steady now. "Honesty won't always make you popular. It won't always protect you, but it will always lead you home." Applause filled the room, the kind that feels real, born from people who understand pain. Afterward, Daniel pulled her aside. "You've started something, Claire. This is more than a case now. It's a movement." She looked back at the crowd, at the faces full of hope and scars. "Then maybe," she said quietly, "that's what the truth was waiting for all along, to be heard by more than just me." As the lights dimmed and people began to leave, a woman approached her with tears in her eyes. "You don't know me," she said, "but your story gave me the courage to tell the truth in my own case." Claire held her hands gently. "Then that's how healing begins. Because sometimes the most powerful justice doesn't happen in a courtroom. It happens when truth passes from one heart to another." Months later, Claire's name was known far beyond her small town. She never asked for fame, but truth has a way of echoing through the right ears. A university invited her to speak at a law symposium about the cost of silence. When she walked onto that stage, the crowd rose to their feet. Professors, lawyers, judges, and students filled the auditorium. Cameras flashed, but Claire wasn't there for the spotlight. She took a deep breath and began, her voice calm, steady, and full of quiet conviction. "I stood in a courtroom where no one listened to me," she said, "and I learned something important. The truth doesn't fail us. We fail it when we choose convenience over courage." You could hear a pin drop. She looked around the hall, locking eyes with the young law students. If you ever stand in a courtroom, don't forget that behind every file, every case number, there's a life. Don't let pride make you deaf to honesty. Because when justice ignores truth, it stops being justice. Daniel sat in the front row, smiling faintly. He remembered the first day he met her, scared, broken, but still holding on to what was right. Now, she was teaching others to protect what once almost destroyed her. After the event, several students approached her, saying her story changed how they saw their future. One girl in tears said, "I want to be the kind of lawyer that listens because of you." Claire hugged her and whispered, "Then you'll already be better than most." As the day ended, Daniel and Claire walked out of the building together. The sun was setting, painting the sky in soft gold. "You come a long way, Claire," Daniel said. "You turned your pain into something powerful." She smiled faintly. "I didn't want pain to be the last thing people remembered. I wanted truth to be." He nodded. "And it will be." That night, when she got home, she sat by the window watching Lily sleep. The house was quiet except for the soft ticking of a clock. She thought about the journey, the humiliation, the disbelief, the loneliness, and how honesty had been both her prison and her freedom. Then she whispered into the still air, as if speaking to the part of her that once almost gave up. "They broke my trust, but they couldn't break my truth." And outside, the night wind carried that whisper through the open window, as if even the world itself agreed. That truth, no matter how long it's buried, always finds a way to rise again. The next morning brought something unexpected. Claire received a letter, not from a lawyer, not from a journalist, but from Judge Warren himself, the same man who once silenced her. The envelope was plain, no court seal, no signature on the back, just her name, written in a trembling hand. She hesitated before opening it. Her heart pounded as she unfolded the paper and read the first line. "I owe you more than an apology." The letter went on. "You made me face the part of myself that I ignored for years. I stopped listening to people and started judging them. I let pride dictate justice, and you paid the price for it. I resigned from the bench. But before I left, I established a new program, one that trains every judge in this state to hear before they rule. You were the reason for that change." Claire set the letter down, her hands shaking. Tears welled up, not from anger this time, but from closure. For so long, she thought justice only lived in verdicts and laws. But now, she realized it could also live in remorse, reflection, and growth. Later that week, she met Daniel for coffee at their usual spot, the quiet diner with peeling paint and kind waitresses who never rushed anyone. He saw the letter in her hand and smiled. "Looks like you didn't just free yourself, Claire," he said. "You freed him too." She looked out the window, watching the morning light spill across the street. "Sometimes people don't need punishment," she said softly. "They just need to remember how to be human again." As they talked, a woman from another table turned around. She recognized Claire. "You're the lady from the news, aren't you? The one who told the truth." Claire nodded, smiling gently. "I am." The woman's voice cracked. "Thank you. My brother's been fighting a false charge for years. Hearing your story gave him hope again." That moment hit Claire harder than any applause ever could. Her story wasn't just hers anymore. It had become a bridge for others who still lived in silence. When she stepped outside, she saw a group of protesters holding signs near the courthouse. "Listen before you judge," and realized they were part of her Voices Heard program. Ordinary people, united by one powerful idea: truth isn't fragile. It's just often ignored. Claire walked past them slowly, her heart swelling with something words couldn't fully capture. Hope. And as she looked up at the same courthouse that once condemned her, she whispered under her breath, "You silenced me once, but now the whole world is speaking." The courthouse steps felt different now. Where once Claire had been dragged out in handcuffs, now she stood freely, watching dozens of people gather with signs that read "Truth Matters" and "Justice for the Silenced." Her face wasn't on the banners, because this wasn't about her anymore. It was about what her fight had awakened. Daniel walked beside her, holding a stack of petitions. "Do you realize this? Over 10,000 signatures for the Right to Be Heard Act. It's already being reviewed by the state legislature." Claire smiled quietly, still taking in the sight. "When I was sitting in that cell," she said, "I thought my voice was gone forever. But maybe that silence was just the start of something louder." As she stepped up to the small stage they'd set up, the crowd grew quiet. The cold breeze lifted her hair slightly, and she gripped the microphone with steady hands. "When I stood here months ago," she began, "I was a name people whispered about. A liar, a thief, a woman no one wanted to believe. But I learned something powerful. The truth doesn't need permission to exist. It just needs one person brave enough to keep speaking it." The crowd murmured in agreement. Some wiped tears. She continued, her voice rising now. They told me being honest wouldn't save me, that it was easier to lie, easier to accept what wasn't right. But honesty didn't just save me, it saved the very people who once doubted me. Daniel stood to the side, his eyes reflecting pride. The once nervous young lawyer had become part of something much larger than a single case. Claire pointed toward the courthouse. That building used to feel like a prison to me. Now, it's a reminder that even the strongest walls can't hold the truth forever. Applause erupted. Cameras flashed, but Claire barely noticed. She wasn't performing. She was releasing something that had lived inside her for too long. After the rally, as people left, a young man approached her quietly. He looked anxious, clutching a folded paper in his hand. I lied in a statement 2 years ago. Someone went to jail because of it, he said, his voice trembling. But after hearing you speak, I'm turning myself in. I can't live with it anymore. Claire didn't scold him. She placed a hand on his shoulder and said, Then you've already taken the first step toward freedom. He nodded, eyes red, and walked away. Daniel watched it all happen. You see that, he said softly. That's why your story matters. Claire looked out over the emptying square, the banners flapping gently in the wind. No, she said quietly. That's why truth matters. Because at the end of it all, it wasn't the system that restored justice. It was honesty, stubborn and unyielding, breaking through where power once stood. Days turned into weeks, and the movement only grew stronger. News outlets began covering voices heard across the nation. Schools invited Claire to speak. Judges referenced her case when training new attorneys. What started as a moment of humiliation had become a ripple of change spreading through the entire justice system. But one morning, as Claire was preparing breakfast for Lily, her phone buzzed with a new message. It was from a man named Edward Malone, a state representative. Mrs. Jensen, it read. We're drafting a new bill that ensures every defendant gets a full evidence review before sentencing. It'll be called the Jensen Act. I'd like you to stand with us when we announce it. She froze for a moment, letting those words sink in. The Jensen Act. Her name, once linked to shame, was now tied to reform. Her eyes filled with tears she didn't bother to hide. Later that week, she stood once again at the state capitol. Cameras lined the front steps, but this time, the flashbulbs didn't sting. Daniel stood beside her, dressed in a dark suit, smiling like a proud brother. When the governor approached the podium, he spoke with quiet reverence. The story of Claire Jensen reminds us that justice fails when truth is ignored. The Jensen Act is a promise that no voice will be dismissed without being heard. Applause rolled through the air like thunder. Claire didn't crave the attention. She just closed her eyes and whispered, finally. After the ceremony, Daniel nudged her lightly. How does it feel? She smiled faintly. Strange. It's like life gave me back what it took, only stronger. That evening, back home, Claire sat on the porch while Lily played in the yard. The sunset painted the sky gold and pink, and the world felt at peace for the first time in a long while. Lily ran up holding a small drawing, a stick figure of her mom, standing in front of a courthouse with the words, "My mommy tells the truth." Claire hugged her tight, laughing softly. That's the best thing anyone's ever said about me. In that quiet moment, she realized something simple but profound. Truth doesn't just fix what's broken, it rebuilds what's worth keeping. And when Daniel called later that night to congratulate her again, she told him something he'd never forget. You know, Daniel, people say honesty is a risk, but I think dishonesty is the real danger. Because lies build walls, and the truth, no matter how painful, always tears them down. He paused on the line, his voice low. You just summed up everything justice should be. As the night deepened, Claire looked out at the stars, calm, glowing, endless. And for the first time in years, she didn't feel watched, judged, or trapped. She simply felt free. The morning after the bill was passed, the news channels were flooded with one headline. The Jensen Act approved, truth wins. Claire didn't turn on the TV this time. She didn't need to. She could feel it in the air, a sense of closure, of healing, of purpose finally fulfilled. When she walked outside, The same neighbors who once avoided her now waved with pride. The bakery owner gave her a warm smile and said, "You made us believe again, Claire." Even the courthouse, that cold building that once stole her dignity, now had a plaque near its entrance. "Justice begins when someone speaks the truth." She stopped in front of it, running her fingers over the carved letters, whispering, and sometimes that someone is just a mother who refused to give up. Later that afternoon, Daniel arrived at her house. He brought no cameras, no reporters, no headlines, just coffee and quiet. "I wanted to say thank you," he told her, sitting across the table. Claire smiled. "For what?" "For reminding us that the law isn't about power. It's about people. You reminded the world that truth doesn't need a stage. It just needs someone brave enough to speak it." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the soft hum of life returning to normal. And when Daniel left, Claire watched him walk down the path, sunlight falling over both of them, a silent symbol that some stories don't end in darkness. They end in light. That night, Claire tucked Lily into bed. "Mom," Lily asked softly, "why did everyone clap for you on TV?" Claire smiled and brushed her daughter's hair from her forehead. "Because I told the truth, sweetheart. And the truth has a way of setting everyone free, even those who don't know they need it." She kissed her forehead and turned off the light. Outside, the world was still, and for the first time, so was her heart. Her story wasn't about fame or revenge. It was about redemption, about what happens when you choose honesty over fear. Because when the truth stands tall, even the strongest walls crumble. And in that quiet victory, justice finally breathes. If this story touched you, take a second to breathe and reflect. Sometimes truth isn't comfortable, it's cleansing. It doesn't shout, it heals. The power of honesty isn't in proving others wrong, but in freeing yourself from what's false. Subscribe to stay close to stories that don't just entertain, but awaken. Because here, every story reminds us, truth doesn't punish, it purifies. And no matter how dark the courtroom, light always finds a way in.